Welcome. Okay, Clive, thanks. Yeah, welcome to each and every one of you. Yeah, okay, sound good, Kev, thanks. Um, Warm welcome if there's anyone coming here for the first time. Warm welcome for people coming from a long way, and yet here we are. And a warm welcome to those who will be watching the replay, of course. Okay, so another day, another Dharma, another morning of letting go. As I told you in the chat, I'm doing my best to letting go of my sleepiness this morning. It's one of those mornings. So I can see people getting from different kinds of weather forecast. So we all have lots of things to let go from. And we're at the right place in the right moment to explore that with Christopher Titmuss, the senior most Dharma teacher in the West, been teaching over 50 years. And he's in Totnes, Devon, and he's just guiding us this week through letting go. Is it an act of will? Yeah, lots to explore. So, just a couple of things before we start, before we sit. We'll be here for roughly an hour. Christopher will guide us through a short Dharma talk, then a long sitting practice, and then there will be some time for comments and questions. For your comments and questions, you have the chat where we're all greeting each other. And if you have a question, please type question in capital letters so it's easier for Christopher to, follow that. You can also come on screen. I think I forgot to mention that yesterday. And if you really want to come on screen, which is a good way to interact in the Sangha, you have the little hand on the bottom of your screen. Just click on that and I will see if I can bring you on. Well, thanks for letting me know, Clara. Caroline, I can see you on the chat, so you should be on the call. But I'll see what I can do. I'll see what I can do. Yeah, refreshing your browser would be a good thing, because if you're in the chat, you're in the stream. So it's maybe just something with the image, with the sound. But refresh it and let's see what happens. Okay, so last thing, dana, the Buddhist practice of generosity, and our main form of sustenance, of sustaining this whole platform, this whole Sangha, this whole, work of being together, practicing together. And as usual, I will let you have the Dana link. It's just an invitation to participate. It's not a trade, not a price, not a fee. It's just the good heart will to, share, participate, being with this entire community in a way that we can give something and in return get something, but not with the sense of a trade. We don't have any other kind of income apart from your donations, and yet we're keeping doing this for over 10 years in a heartfelt, meaningful way, because we believe we're doing something for the good of a lot of people and for our own good. I speak for myself. So if you can donate whatever you can, it's duly appreciated and very welcome. If you can't, it's all good, because that's what we're here for, to support each other the best way we can, and to create this sangha and to enhance this sangha. So feel free to donate whatever you can. And if you can't donate, stick with us, stay with the session, and practice. That's the best invitation I can let you have. Okay, let me see if something is happening in the background with this streaming. Otherwise, I see people claiming they can't see the image. I see the internet is not very reliable today. That might be just it. But the first invitation is, please try to refresh. You won't be taken off the call. Try to refresh your browser and see if that works. And that will be all for me for now. Thank you all. Have a nice session, and I'll hand it over to Christopher.
A very warm welcome to each and every one of you. It's a good morning, a good afternoon, a good evening, and definitely a good middle of the night. While George was speaking there, I found myself appreciating heartfully the presence of the Sangha. In this body of teachings, its significance is emphasized in the great statement, I go for refuge in the Sangha. Not I take, I go for. That means knowing that there is a Sangha of men, women, and other sharing together, looking into this human experience together, discovering insights, challenges, freeing up the whole being, dedicated to love, to compassion, to service, living a life of modesty and more. It's a privilege to go for refuge in the Sangha, to feel that real interconnected support, which is what the Sangha is all about. Thank you, everybody, for your presence, for your ongoing dedication in a world which is struggling and challenged. And we do have many important resources, methods, techniques, values, and approaches which can be of real support to ourselves and others. Never forget it. So let's have a quiet minute together, and then I'll speak a little bit about our morning session. Okay. Got one or two reminders here in front of me. So the period of time falls into 3 areas. I'll speak to you for around 15 minutes on the theme of the day. Following on from that, a guided meditation for around 30 minutes or so, and then questions either via the chat column or directly as you wish. And with the exploration and the theme, I want to weave a couple of things here together with you. One is some questions which I had put and other on the theme. So quite often, as mentioned yesterday with you, due to the kind of conditioning that we have, quite often social conditioning, we are constantly putting pressure on ourselves to make an effort, to bring in willpower, to strive hard, to succeed, to get our goals. This view is a nightmare. It's insensitive. I find it irresponsible and putting undue pressure on people's lives to succeed. And therefore, the force of desire in the name of wanting to achieve puts this pressure on our lives, but also it puts pressure on others to conform to our desire because we can't move in life unless we get the support of others there. So we're exploring a fresh way, and that fundamental deep change there is to use specifically in a short period of time the application of some determination, some effort for a situation in a specific. The antidote to it being a problem is love. The antidote to it is interest. And that love and interest keeps the energy flowing. We don't get tired out. And therefore, in connection with the love, the ethical love, the caring love that we offer, the interest that we offer to our project, to our initiative, to our engagement, there we stay true to that, but recognizing, yes, it's going to take some effort. Yes, it takes some quiet determination to stay steady with pain or sickness in order to recover from it and to be with it, etc. A key question, therefore, why is it, how is it, and that's a little bit of the theme with you this morning, that sometimes we see inside of ourselves that there is a dependency upon in a problematic way. It shows itself in a problematic way by our agitation, by the kind of sensations in the body, the attitude of mind, the way we think. So in looking at dependency in a problematic way, it's important this, in a problematic way, we look at what's going on inside of us, which is inflaming the situation to make a problem out of it. And that applies to anything. And it still applies to health, still applies to sickness, still applies to work, etc. And relationships, and obviously much more. So our exploration is, one, to recognize where we're making a problem out of in such a way that it's bringing about reactivity, projections, agitations, excessive thinking, and more. That shows dependency problematic. Plenty of times in life, there's areas of dependency which is not problematic. In order to sit in this seat, I am dependent on the intention to do it, and I'm dependent that there is a seat for me to sit on. In order to breathe, I require the air. I'm dependent on my environment to be able to breathe in. In order to feel, I'm dependent on consciousness to be conscious of feeling. So in this practice, we recognize human beings live in an abiding state of dependency. It doesn't have to be a problem, and we need to be extremely clear where there is a dependency with a problem. And then we come back to the question. What is it? This is not easy, this one. What is it that sometimes we see something so immediately and so quickly that it kind of wakes us up? I'm not speaking in grandiose Buddha terms here. We call it a mini Buddha mind. It wakes us up and we see something so clearly, and we know, as it were, I'm not going to repeat that. I'm not going to go down that unwholesome, unhealthy road. I'm not going to say that or whatever. And we see it so clearly, and we've understood in the very moment of seeing clearly, oh, I see clearly and it stops. I see clearly and it develops something. I see clearly, well, this is important. Right there, we think, we could ask ourselves, where did that come from? It just came out of the blue. In spiritual East, in the East spirituality, blue is the color of the infinite. The blue sky, the blue ocean being a kind of metaphor. Sometimes it comes out of the blue. Whoa. And we're grateful and we're appreciative and we don't know where it came from. What we can say is there's a certain receptivity to that. The word vipassana, widely, I hardly ever use the word, but others do. What means V means to double, passa means contact. So the English word insight is a fairly precise translation. So sometimes to see clearly, which is vipassana, which is insight, it's right there. Whew, we're grateful and appreciative to see clearly, and there was no effort involved. It just flashed upon us. These are important. We need to recognize them. And as the Buddha said, these insights are worthy of acceptance. We don't have to accept everything in life, but this is one of those areas where it's really worthy of acceptance. And the second there is we reflect, we look at, and when the understanding, because we've looked to find understanding, when the understanding is coming in, the striving, the willpower, the desiring, the reactivity drops away. So it's immediate sometimes, and it's gradual in the other. Let's use both resources so that we're living our life, a liberated life, which is an understanding, of not being dependent upon in a problematic way. It allows us to live. It allows us to age. It allows us to go through changes. And it allows us as well to die, because we're not living our life in a problematic way. And therefore, there isn't a dependency, fearful one, on life fading out. Sometimes, coming back to the Sangha for the moment, I find this very, very regularly, one of the joys of living one's life primarily in the Sangha, that the communications that we have, remember a Sangha can be two people talking together, doesn't have to be anything Buddhist about it. The other person doesn't have to be a meditator, engaged in mindfulness practices, perhaps will never dream of joining Sangha live, nor Sangha dead for that matter. But more importantly, you have an exchange. And in that exchange, there's a bit more depth. The practitioners have a little bit more responsibility here. Can you ask a question to bring a little bit more depth? And in that exchange, and it could be about life, action, what am I doing with my life? What really matters? What needs to change? All these important questions. And the outcome of that, you have something to share. You have love for the person or persons in front of you. You are deeply interested in their welfare and their whole being. Your questions reflect that. Your empathy reflects that. And at the end of that coffee with that person, in the end of that walk with that person, in the end of that evening meal or whatever it is, both of you or more of you feel nourished. That's the Sangha. That's what the Sangha is about. It doesn't have to have the same priorities as you and I, but we listen to each other, strangers, family members, friends, whoever, colleagues, whatever. And part of our activity is to ask the question, have an interest. So maybe the person may have a aha moment, may have, oh, that was really helpful. I can really work on that. You've really given me something to think about, or whatever. All of this is a contribution to changing and supporting a fresh view of another, which reveals less dependency, therefore less worry, less anxiety, less fear, less blame. As that reduces itself, less pressure, less giving oneself a hard time, greater recognition of inner peace as a great step towards freeing up the whole being. So please, in your communications with others, see in the warmest, friendly, easy-going way what you might ask that will help the conversation to make a little change there. And in Buddha language for the moment, a person is relating some anguish in their life. And the anguish will change because in the communication, one knows the anguish only arises because the causes and conditions are there. What might the person change in their causes and conditions which will help to reduce, maybe immediately, gradually, the anguish? And that can save a lot of effort, a lot of pressure, a lot of I must get rid of this, relying on willpower, excuse me, and so forth. All right. So in the period, I'm just looking at the notes here. So in the recognition of this, plenty of things in the daily life, multiplicity of them, they're really unproblematic. Much of what you and I see, hear, smell, taste, and touch is unproblematic. Much of what we feel is unproblematic. What we think is unproblematic. Much of the relationship to the past and to the future is unproblematic. So this recognition of the unproblematic in your daily life is important. And what is equally important to know clearly what is problematic. What affects you? What puts you down? Where do you feel the most frustration or tension or whatever? So we have the bigger picture, which is vital, the unproblematic. We got the specifics where we see dependency in the problematic way. We might share those with another. We might meditate and reflect. We might do some research, all with the quiet intention to dissolve the problematic. And therefore some insight, a fresh attitude, a different kind of view begins to come in, and one says, well, that which was problematic is no longer problematic. It's now gone from the relative truth, problematic, to a much bigger truth, unproblematic. This teaching is about that shift. It always has been about that shift. It's been spoken about this morning, and everything is a shift from the relative, the conventional. There are real problems in life, no glossing over them. They need attention, they need sharing, they need inquiry, and we're looking at the bigger picture, the unproblematic, which accommodates this. And our teaching is a shift from the problematic to the unproblematic. The unproblematic, there's a simple word for it, nirvana. That's what we're interested in. It's not far away. It's very, very close at hand. We have plenty of tastes of it. And this is what the focus is. All right. Talked enough. Let's have the quiet minute together and then a guided meditation. Sitting with the straight posture. Sitting rather tall and upright. With a rather expansive awareness. This expansive awareness means there is an absence of focus on the specific. such as the breath, or the body scan, or the body as elements, or on feelings, or states of mind, or thinking. So it is an expansive awareness. We are abiding, receptive, with no particular object to focus on. We are just being receptive. The world of apparent objects comes to consciousness. We abide in a state of receptivity. We are not putting any priority on the method and technique of breath, body scan, not putting in the effort to try to stay with it, the breath, the body scan, etc. This is an expansive perception, a choiceless awareness. there is the simple presentation of the so-called world. Namely, language and the description, such as receptive to the eyes and the light under the eyelids if the eyes are closed. Receptive to the ears, the voice of the speaker, receptive to the silence, knowing and seeing clearly. There is nothing inherently problematic with the seeing or with the hearing. Coming to the nose, any smells that one is receptive to, the air element passing up through the nostrils, coming to the tongue to taste, the water, the saliva in the mouth, pure experience with the description. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and then touch. The touch of the backside with the cushion or chair. The touch of two hands together. The touch of the air element. Warmth, coolness, heat. So in this expansive awareness, we know the unproblematic features of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. and then turning and being receptive to what we call the inner life. Being receptive to thoughts which may be occurring. So just as in the seeing, there is just the seeing, in the hearing, there is just the hearing. In the same way, in the thinking, there is just the thinking. The thought is just a thought, just as a sight is just a sight, a sound is just a sound. Being mindful and conscious, receptive to the feeling tones, pleasant, painful, uncomfortable in the body or in the mind or somewhere in between. A feeling is just a feeling. We are receptive to it. We do not have to make a big deal out of what we feel or what we think. In our calm abiding, in our receptivity, feelings and thinking are witnessed as just feeling and thinking. We do not have to put pressure on ourselves to be in the here and now. Feeling and thinking can include what did arise, the past, memory. Feeling and thinking can include the so-called future, what will arise or might arise. So we have an expansive view. So we are not dependent on being in the moment and all the agitation that holding on to the here and now can generate. So our expansive awareness, our choiceless awareness gives the whisper of not being dependent on what did arise, what is arising, or what will or might arise. We have the whisper. There is the whisper of the timeless. and therefore the unproblematic. Which embraces, in the seeing there is just the seeing, in the hearing there is just the hearing, and in the knowing of the unproblematic there is the knowing of the unproblematic. Remaining minute or so. Okay, thank you for lending an ear. Let me put the specs on here. Morning chai. Question. Ruth says, yesterday you spoke about effort so beautifully. I wonder what the word candy means patience or peace or both. Would you say that when skillful effort comes from love and interest, this is kanti? Yes, if I understand the meaning of the word correctly here. This change, and as the Buddha commented with metta, which means love, but it also means loving kindness, and it also means friendship, depending on context. That the expressions of love and interest brings a certain calm, quiet patience with life, inner peace and receptivity, just as expressed in a way in another language with the guided meditation. And what's precious about that, we will notice earlier when situations arise which require our attention, require our skill, our wisdom, our exploration. We're not trying to make life into some perfect realm, but rather that expanse which the guided meditation intimated. So when something arises that needs some work and skill and practice and exploration, we've got the sense of well-being and the love and the interest to explore that. And therefore we are making a contribution to the reduction of suffering in life, wherever it might be. I'm feeling a lot of grief at the moment from all sorts and many personal losses. Do you have any words of wisdom how to be and navigate this? At times it is excruciatingly painful. I do. I'll quote the Buddha for the moment. In the very first paragraph in the written of the 4 foundations or applications of mindfulness, he said, the first words were, The application of mindfulness is to overcome grief. It's given a high priority. And grief usually relates to loss already happening or could happen. And the grief, to put it bluntly, is wanting to keep what one has lost. Wanting is taking place, and the wanting can go in different areas, all sorts of many personal losses. And it's not unusual in this very challenging world that lots of different kinds of losses, separation, death, things gone out of one's life in all sorts of ways generates the grief. The support for the grief is the wanting it to be different. The challenge is the exploration in which the feeling of sadness is healthy, it's normal, it requires our respect. And therefore, the small words of wisdom here is to return to the feeling element, usually some form of sadness. Be with the sadness there. Be patient with the sadness. Notice the quality of sadness, feelings and sensations in the body are changing. And that sadness will gradually dissolve, fade, and you will find yourself at peace with the situation or the various situations. That's the process. And finally, please use your senses to the max. What I mean by that, lots of care to what you see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. Really receptive, that bigger picture there. So to help get into perspective the grief due to loss, to separation, and feel the sadness. That's the response. If we could just stay in that quiet disentanglement with everything that comes to consciousness. Why is there so much talking about what we should protect our sense doors from or stay away from, rather than staying away or protecting? Wouldn't it be not making anything not of, nor getting entangled in? Yes. Meaning, sometimes there's a kind of emphasis that takes place about protecting our senses. One has to tread carefully with this. It's that language, psychological language world sometimes of setting up boundaries and borders and so forth. I think one has to tread very carefully in this area. Rather than protecting, it is supporting our remarkable capacity when we see, just to see the colors, the forms and the shapes. When we hear, just to hear the sounds. And the same application with the other senses and the inner life. And the mindfulness, therefore, is a remembering just to see the seeing, the hearing, and so forth. And in a remarkable way, that helps stabilize the being and it gives us support. We might say it gives us some protection there. Sometimes the exception to the rule may be if there is a potential for danger, the potential to be really hurt by what we see and hear, then we may take some necessary wise steps just to stay away from and to keep that option available to us. But let's expand the senses rather than contraction. It will give us the support. How beautiful. Oh, just take what Julietta's first. The whisper of eternity, embracing the being with love during the meditation, expansion of the heart, shining mind. I'm going to put my glasses on here. Shining being. Thank you, Christopher, for the beautiful guided this morning. Thank you for the kind words. There's something intimately close, which is a little bit of the thread with you this morning. We can talk about the timeless. We can talk about the eternal. And it seems such an nirvana, such an abstract, far away. And it's as near as trees are to wood. It's as near as waves are to the ocean. And that sense of the eternal and its embrace and inclusion of the ordinary and the everyday. The ordinary and the everyday and all the diversity is the confirmation of the infinite. It's the confirmation of the immeasurable. There's no gap. We are here to see there is no gap. And as they say on the London Underground, the best mantra you can find in London, mind the gap. All right. How am I doing? Oh, golly. I'm going to answer one more question. And as I said previous days, you have lots of important things to do. It's just been seeing and hearing here, seeing and hearing elsewhere to engage. There's not that big a difference. Reflection. How beautiful it was to receive in your reflection about nirvana being something simple, and we have plenty of experience of something we know from. There was a sense of delight when that landed in the meditation. You spoke of, back to the glasses, you spoke of in the thinking, it is just a thinking. There was a sense of relief, ease, and a somatic knowing of not needing to forcefully effort into the knowing of that, but it happens in a way of letting go, letting be, letting go. Thank you for speaking so on what right effort feels like, and the point of bringing interest is so helpful. Lovely. It's a joy to read the responses from you. And just as we just listened to a moment or two ago there, sometimes in a guided meditation, which is one of the precious jewels of the guided meditations, something just, the truth of something, the obviousness of something just stands out that little bit more clearly. It's an insight. We appreciate something of the expanse of this life, so expansive that it accommodates birth, it accommodates change, it accommodates death. And there can be that quiet knowing there while engaged in this phenomenal existence that we are participating in. And just on that note, finally, I noticed the other day, George mentioned about myself being one of the senior teachers there. There are 4 of us who've been around for a while who are celebrating or marking or noting, whatever, the numbers. One is Fred von Allman, wonderful teacher in Switzerland, who a few months ago, last year, I think August, he had his 80th birthday. In May, Joseph Goldstein, wonderful teacher from Barre, Massachusetts, Insight Meditation Society, had his 80th birthday. John Kabat-Zinn, who's another great servant of the Dharma, wonderful contribution in the mindfulness field, he had his 80th birthday. Another, Ajahn Sumedho, and monks, I think, I understand, from around the world came to the monastery because in this period it's his 90th birthday. And then Christopher in Earth Day, so later April, I had my 80th birthday there. So I'm going to write next day or two a short blog on this. And you probably can, we might. The title of the blog will be, I thought it was rather good, Our Days Are Numbered. But the number is only a number in the mind. Thank you, everybody. Lots of love to you. See you tomorrow morning, afternoon, or night. Thank you.